Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with a wife and mom of two who started her competition journey in 2019 when she was 10 months postpartum from having her son. That year, she won the Bikini Overall, then went on to compete two more times before going to complete basic training and starting a whole new chapter in the U.S. Army as a 68 Fox physical therapy tech. She is still serving as an active duty sergeant and stationed at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, where she was born and raised. And since she fell in love with this sport, she competed in 8 NPC shows total with 6 class wins and 3 overall titles, as well as 3 national shows with a 4th place, a 6th place, and then earning her IFBB Pro card at the National Championships in December of 2023. Welcome to the show, Marina Marks. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good and just so happy and honored to be here.
Well, it's my honor as well, and I'm so glad that you are here. And before we jump into everything, I have to ask if there's anything you do or think about or a ritual you have before your heel hits the stage.
Well, I always, just thank God, say a little prayer for myself. And I think about kind of getting myself centered, and that usually encompasses with thinking about my kids. So I usually just kind of scroll up pictures on them. They always put me in a good mood, make me really happy. And I typically have I say like a battle buddy backstage. So either my husband or at my pro debut or my pro card win, it was my best friend Marissa. So I usually have a buddy there to kind of calm my nerves as well. But yeah,
That's
that's kind
awesome.
of the system.
I love that. Have you ever done a show without someone backstage with you?
No, I haven't actually for almost every one of my shows, except for my pro win. Unfortunately, my husband had been there with me at every single show. And even my daughter at one of my shows, she was backstage with me.
Wow, that is so
Yeah.
cool. I can't imagine having your daughter back there with you. Like, I imagine that's awesome and feels so good and motivating and it's exciting for her. But then was there a stress component to that at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we plan these shows, but sometimes babysitting falls through and everything's already set in the motions to make that show happen. So we just took her and my husband was like, don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine. So we had her in the stroller backstage and she was a good baby, for the most part. She was eating rice crackers and peanut butter with me and just really happy. There's a lot of downtime between the shows. So we were just going around pushing her and she seemed to have a good time. I was able to bring her up on stage with me at the end of the show. I have a picture with her on stage when I got the overall at that show. So it was a good win to have her. Felt really blessed.
That is so special. And you've only ever competed as a mom. And I feel like you probably have a lot of interesting perspectives on taking on both of those identities of competitor and mom at the same time, really. Being that your first show was only 10 months postpartum. So, how do you navigate the time and the energy demands of competing while also being a mom and a wife?
There's a lot of that's a great question because I get asked it a lot. And I've even asked other women the same exact question. There's a lot of sometimes mom guilt that goes into it, but there's also a lot of I give all of my energy, I would say, goes to my kids, my kids, my husband, and my work. And a lot of me is split up into those categories. So this is my one kind of thing that I have for me. Um, and I would never compete if I felt like it's going to take away from my kids. I always tell, me and my husband, because we both compete, we're always like, the kids didn't ask us to compete. They don't really know that we compete. This is completely separate to them. So I never want anything to have to take away from, their childhood. Or if I'm tired, this is what I chose to do, so I'm going to show up and be the mom that they need, that they want. I'm not going to let it, affect my mentality or how I'm feeling, if they're annoying which sometimes they can be, it's not their fault that I decided to do a show. So I never try to let it get in the way.
That's a really great point. I know there's so many moms in general who express mom guilt. Like if they don't get or they don't spend a free moment with their kids, they feel guilty about it. But then there's that other side of it where it's like you need to be your own person, you need to have passions of
Right.
your own and have your health too. So, how do you navigate that when it's like crunch time and prep mode versus like maybe improvement season?
Well, improvement season, I probably don't take it as seriously as maybe some other competitors do because that's like my makeup time, you know what I mean? So we're doing everything like yesterday, we're at Disney on Ice.
That's
So,
cool.
which I mainly go for me, but I'm happy I have kids as an excuse to go to.
I know.
But but I use it mainly as motivation. If I'm going to be taking this much time away from my kids, and I love being with my kids, if they're gonna have to, some of the time's gonna have to eat into that, then I want to make it kind of worth it. I want to make sure that I'm checking the boxes on everything because I don't want to bring something that I'm not proud of to stage, and it already had to sacrifice the time with the kids. So I use it mainly as like kind of a motivating factor. But I will say this last the prep I did for my pro card, man, that was a rough prep because we had just bought a house. My husband had just gone back to work. My daughter was getting dropped off at a daycare. My husband had been like the house husband for a little bit and was watching her. And so it was dropping two kids off. It was paying for the house. I didn't have the support of my family because I was living with them. My husband was starting work. So there was just a lot of stress, a lot of tension in the air. So that made it really, really difficult. And I remember reaching out to some of my other friends who compete that are moms and have, outside careers and some pro moms as well. And I was like, how do y'all do it? I mean, I've been doing it, but it's a way different ballgame when you're like paying rent, doing, everything.
Yeah.
One kid here, one kid there, one spouse is working, like you high five when you see each other and then go to sleep. I'm like, how do y'all do it? And at 8 weeks out, I remember putting it out there into the universe and asking for advice. And all of them said, like, this is for you. You're constantly pouring into other people. You need to continue to pour into yourself. It's something you love to do, but maybe don't compete all the time. Maybe just focus on this one and do your best and kill it. And the rest of the year, you have the rest of the year. It's just, 8 weeks left. So yeah, it was really helpful to have a lot of female, friends who kind of understood the struggle that I was going through. But
I
yeah.
think that makes such a big difference to have women you can turn to and get insight from or support from. Like, I love interviewing moms like yourself because I'm like keeping a running note section for when one day, hopefully, I can be a mom and compete. And I think there's this consistent identity crisis we face as athletes. And one of your followers had expressed that they are literally going through this identity crisis where they're going to take a break from competing to start a family. So, given all the things that you've heard from others you've spoken to, as well as your own experiences from not just as an amateur, but as a pro, what would you tell that person?
How to not lose your identity.
Yeah, like
That's
how
the
or
main.
how do you navigate that identity shift from I'm stepping away from competing to start a family?
Well, I only have been competing with my kids, so my experience is a little bit different. But I will say I remember in 2020, it was actually Universe. I went to Universe in 2020. So maybe that was it. I don't know. One time I met you. But
Maybe
but
it
in
was at
2020,
like a random expo too.
that might have been it. Or a show. If you've ever done shows in Texas, I've been at like I don't know how many. So either been to them as visitors or competed. So I'm always there. But I remember in 2020, it was my comeback kind of year from going to basic and joining the military. And I had just gotten when I came back, the first show I won the overall, and then two shows I got first place. And so then it was time to go to nationals. And it was my first national show, and I got fourth place. So I was like, hey, that's not bad, like this might be good. Maybe I can either do one next year at the beginning or who knows? I was already strategizing and thinking about it. And the one time I've ever put out a deadline of when I'm going to compete, a month later, I'm pregnant. I find out I'm
Um,
pregnant. Before I sometimes lose my period during stressful times. I lost it at basic training. Sometimes during prep, I lose my period. It just happens. Some preps I do, some preps I don't. But in that one, they had been running me pretty hard, my coach at the time. So I hadn't had a period for 7 months at that point. So it'd been a
Oh,
really long time without my period. And so I was expecting my cycle to start. And right when my cycle was starting, I took a pregnancy test just on the off chance, and it turned out I was pregnant with my daughter.
well,
So that was a shift to go from being like, oh, you did well, you got a top 5 placing, to now, things might have to be on the back burner. So that was, I don't want to say a bummer because it wasn't. I was really
right.
excited to be pregnant again. But it was a big shift to be like, oh, how am I going to be able to come back? Like I know I had my son, but it might be different after two. You never know.
Mhm.
But I just took it in because I did love being pregnant. I did love the baby phase. And I was like, the stage will always be there. And if it's meant to be, it'll be when it's time. And so I just appreciated that baby time. I loved it. My daughter's amazing. And I know a lot of women sometimes do get fearful that kids are going to stunt their competition career, but it doesn't. And honestly, I didn't start until after I had my son, and I feel like it motivates me more, like I said, because now that you have like some skin in the game, outside skin in the game, that's like, I got to be an example. I got to make this prep worth it. I'm not going to just, slouch off or bring something that isn't worth it to the stage, because it's not just me, it's my kids. And if I'm going to, like I said, if I'm going to take this time out to do this prep, I want it to be my absolute best, every show. I have
Mm.
had one show where it wasn't, and oh my God, I regret it. It was so embarrassing.
Same.
Yeah,
Been
never
there, done
again.
that. Never doing that again. I've been
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Peace with food without sacrificing your goals as a competitor because you deserve to have successful preps, productive improvement seasons, and peace of mind year round. I decided to create a free 8-day food relationship coaching series a few years back that over 800 over 800 people have gone through. Because when your head is cluttered with thoughts of food, eating, guilt, you have a lot less energy to invest into the goals that you truly care about. So, this free program was designed to help athletes like yourself develop a healthy relationship with food so you can have your most fulfilling and effective preps, improvement seasons, and lifestyle phases as well. This is an 8-day series that has a video every single day, a full workbook to guide you through every single video, and you can respond to the emails with the work you did and receive direct support and guidance from me personally, which is, of course, something I love to provide to the community. So you're not only going to discover your ideal relationship with food, but you'll also identify detrimental thought and behavior patterns. You'll overcome guilt and shame. So every decision can be made with intention and pride. We will use expectations and reinforcements to seamlessly manipulate your behavior around food to be more positive and aligned with that ideal relationship with food. We'll figure out why you're really craving what you are when you're sleep deep in another jar of peanut butter, or justifying that next cookie, or continuously eating endless bags of rice cakes, whatever it is for you. We'll become crystal clear on why you act, think, and live the way you do, so you can, of course, act, think, and live the way you want to. And we'll come up with some personal commitments that are rooted in positive psychology based on your current season. So, this is a psychoeducational course. It is free to anyone and everyone. You can access it at www.celestial.fit/food series and learn more about it, as well as even get a sneak peek into the accessible PDF notebook with the extra resources and guidance through every single workshop along the way. If you do decide to participate in it and you love it, of course, I encourage you to share it with a friend or a teammate or another athlete who may be struggling. Or if you hear about someone's struggle, let them know that this exists.
I'm like, how do we erase those from the NPC website?
Right? And there's sometimes you do good and like you look good, but the lighting is just like it wasn't happening. And I'm just like, that's on there forever.
I know, exactly. You just shared a lot of really great insight in that. And what an amazing journey too, to be so close to winning your pro card, finding out you're pregnant. As happy as it sounds like you were and grateful you were and how much you made the most of that, there was that maybe grief. Grief was the word that came to mind, like a bit of that grief of like, oh, the road to pro. has to be put on pause and I don't know
Right.
if I'll come back. So when did you come back after having your daughter, and how was your prep different with having two kids?
Oh man. Sometimes the military is cool in the way that like it makes you lose that fear and anxiety of the future. Just kind of like it is what it is. Embrace the suck is like our mantra, you know? So I don't really ever think of it as this is going to be harder or it's going to be a challenge. It's just more like I'm just going to do it. Like I'm either not or I am, you know? It's just it's not it hasn't always been that way. I think the military kind of ingrains that in you is that you just are, like you just will. And I think if you don't have that questioning of if it going to happen, isn't it going to happen? How am I going to do it? I don't know how, but I will, you know? And with kids, it's even more so. Like I remember for my pro debut, like, or my pro, I keep saying that. I'm excited for it, clearly. For
It's
my,
coming up.
yeah, for my pro win, my kids had lice, like during peak
Wow.
week. What are you
Yeah.
supposed to do with that? You know, like,
Wow.
so I remember I found out on that Monday they sent my son home. Thankfully, I'd already requested off like leave from work, but yeah, my daughter actually was one that they said had lice, and then I checked my son, and he was like patient zero. He was the one exploding with the lice. I never had lice as a kid, so I was just like, what do I do? So I
Yeah.
stayed up till 3 a.m getting the bug, debugging them, and wanting to burn down my house, vacuuming, washing,
Yeah.
like everything. I almost wanted to cancel because I was like, there's so many things going on in that prep that I was like, God, do you want this for me? Is this supposed to happen? Like, and my coach and my best friend were just like, no, just push through it. It's okay. Don't let it set you back. Try not to stress. But that's just how it kind of is with kids. Like, yeah, there was that grief when I found out, grief of like what I thought was going to happen, but also just a true excitement for a chapter that I wasn't expecting. But now looking back on it, I couldn't see my life without my daughter. She's just
Yeah.
amazing, you know? I remember almost being scared because I was like, I love my son so much. Do I have enough room in my heart for
Oh.
another child, you know? And then you hold her or you're pregnant with her even, and you're just like, oh, there's room. God makes room.
Oh, that's amazing. I love everything about what you just said, and from handling things as they come, embracing the difficulties, taking things head on when they show up, like lice, for example, and
It's crazy.
continuing
Disgusting.
the journey without letting it stop you, even though, but what I also appreciate about what you said is there are times where you considered stopping and you had a support system that was encouraging you
Oh,
and
yeah.
allowing you to see the value of continuing. I know that there was a time, at least you had said that your husband was there consistently for you,
Mhm.
but there was a time where he wasn't. So what was going on at that time in your life, and how have things evolved since then?
Right. So again, like I said, that this last prep was just a lot of things were hitting us, you know. Um, like I said, we had just bought a house. We had been living with my mom. And so there's stress with living with like your parents and like trying to raise your own kids, but it was a big support having her as like an extra hand, not having to pay rent. I was able to pocket some of the money that I was getting from the military for basic housing to, you know, stay with my family. There's a lot of really great things that came with that. But a point did come where we wanted to be an independent family and, you know,
Mhm.
start kind of evolving as a couple. But with that comes stress. My husband had been the stay-at-home parent for a little bit, and I think just kind of relinquishing that role and bringing back the role of I'm working, you know, I'm providing. That was a lot on him. Dropping off two kids, like I said, we had only had to do that with one, and now we're doing that with both. And just finances, time, this put a lot of strain on us. Prep at that point, my husband, he was stressed out. So we were supposed to both do that show in December. And then our coach was like, hey, I don't think, you know, you're going to be ready, man. Like, I think if you want to bring something competitive, we might have to wait till next year. And so that was kind of a hit too, you know?
Yeah.
So getting that hit and then also being supportive for me, like, you're going to keep going and I have to take a back seat, it was a big time strain. And so it caused a lot of problems for us that we hadn't even had problems like that before. You know, we had always been so supportive of each other, and we hadn't really had issues to this level. And it really took me going to a counselor to talk about it. And them saying like, you know, some of those behaviors aren't normal. Some of that, the way that y'all are speaking to each other isn't right, you know? And so we had tried adjusting things and it just wasn't working. And it just got to a point where things were just too toxic at that environment at that time, you know, with all the stress. And I had never been a person to believe in breaks. I never really liked the idea of them. I always thought like, let's figure this out now. Like, let's just go get through it and then, you know, move forward. Breaks, I always thought were going to bring people more apart, you know. But it is what we needed. Like he needed to go to counseling as well. He needed to figure out how he was going to, you know, be as an individual and not just dad, the stay-at-home dad who is Keegan, you know, once the kids go to school, you know, so figuring that out too. And then I think I needed to figure out some things too, like how it really tested my strength and my own independence because we separated 3 weeks out from my show, and it was like, how am I going to do this? You know, I have had him as a support, not just as a husband, but as like a teammate, as like a parent, you know. So it was really, really hard, and it was I'm almost thankful for that prep because I don't know how I would have handled things if I didn't have something to pour my emotions into. But it was bittersweet winning your pro card because I always pictured him to be in the audience, you know, shouting my name, and to not hear him and not have him backstage. It was bittersweet. It was the most odd feeling I'd ever felt of just pure joy and happiness that all my work over the years had been recognized, but not being able to share that with my best friend was, you know, a little gut wrenching. You get off the stage, you think things are going to be different when you're a pro, and then you realize, oh, I don't have my best friend here to share it with, you know? But, you know, we came back together and I'm really grateful that it gave him perspective, that it gave me an opportunity to say, you know, Marina, you're strong, you're capable of doing a lot of things. And sometimes the hardest things are voicing your wants and expectations to the people that you love, you know? I don't want to make him feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to make him feel bad that sometimes I was putting my wants and my needs and the family's needs on like the back burner instead of just communicating them. And so it kind of allowed me to recognize my own strength and my own voice. And, you know, he's a lot more understanding of like, you know, maybe I should have just listened to that at the beginning and just put my own ego away and, you know, come together because it's better to have you than not, you know? And so we're doing a lot better now, and counseling is very effective. I'm actually going to school for psychology and I'm hoping to become a social worker. There's a military program for social working. That's my ultimate goal. But yeah, I always thought like, oh, I'd love to do this. And I didn't even think, oh, you could benefit from this, you know? It might be useful to you to implicate into your own life. But yeah, so we're working on things now, and it's been really great. And the kids, you know, the kids really hit it. They feel it the most, you know, and so they're just doing so much better. My son was having some behavior problems during that time too. So it was just really, really hard on everybody. And I'm just so glad that we were able to come back and work things out and have my best friend here again.
Wow. That's a lot of transitions all at one time too.
Yeah. My dad always like kind of said, my dad's the best. He always said like you can handle 3 things, like 3 major things mentally. And then once you start to go past those, it gets really, really hard, you know, to try to juggle all those things emotionally and mentally. And so yeah, my dad's right. My dad's a great guy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like he cares and has compassion and also wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really lucky to have him, you know, growing up.
Yeah. Is he still alive?
Mhm.
Okay, that's
Both
good.
my parents are still alive, thank God. Oh, I don't even want to. I know that you've lost your mom, and like I can't even
Oh,
picture that quite yet. So you're very strong, and she
oh,
obviously did a really good job.
oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you to even say that and acknowledge that. So thank you. And um, I think that demonstrates a lot of what you said demonstrates the importance of support. And sometimes, as difficult as it is, sometimes we have to separate from our support system to make it healthier and stronger.
Right.
And challenging
Yeah,
that
it's
belief was tough because you're like, we're never going to separate. We're never going to take a break. But it sounds
right.
like you needed it. Did you guys talk at all during that time or?
Yeah, I mean, like we spoke a little bit here and there. He was I mean we still have our kids, so we would still have to coordinate and we would still say like, hey, I miss this and I miss that. But before you come back, I think you really need to work on this and I would think you really need to work on that, before because I knew I was going to be weak. I knew I was going to miss him.
Mm,
And so we kind of had to create these like barriers and milestones that we had to hit before we brought things back together. And I kind of needed to see like, yes, I know you love me and I know you're my best friend, but I really, really need this from you because I was the breadwinner and I think my husband kind of had this sense that like, oh, Marina will take care of it. Whatever it is, Marina's got it, and I with all of this happening and the finances and the kids, and I was like, yeah, I will have it, but it's gonna be really hard on me. And it'd be a lot better to have an equal teammate who's in it with me, who's going to take on some of the load for me. And thankfully, like we've come back and that mentality has changed a lot. So I'm really happy.
yeah, that's a beautiful story of overcoming hardship. And I think especially in marriage, you're going to face those difficulties. And if you can handle them and come back better and consistently express as well as fulfill each other's needs selflessly,
Mhm.
you build something really beautiful. And you've mentioned God a few times, so I imagine your faith played a role in this. So what was the role faith played in this and how did it grow you?
Oh, I was reading a lot of books. One of them was like The 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you ever read that one,
So good.
but it's really good. But man, it'll make you it holds a mirror up to you really, really well. And so I had to take some breaks. I was like, man, there's some things that I really need to work on too, about myself. And so yeah, and going back to church too. Like that was something I had wanted to do before. But at the time, I don't think he was in a place where he was ready to accept, you know, God in the way that it needed to be. I didn't want him to just go for me. I wanted him to go for himself. And so we've been going to church now too, and I think that's been really, really helpful as well. But it is hard. It's a big test to separate and then come back together. They were shooting him the statistics when he was, going to counseling because he was going to a very like a intensive, like outpatient kind of counseling situation. And they were telling him like, it's like a 13% chance y'all will, get back together.
Mm.
But they're really mainly just focus on you. And if you work on you, then you'll more likely get together at the end of it. But just focus on you. But the statistics that they're kind of throwing at him weren't really inspiring. But thankfully, we fit into that 13%. And we were able to see it on the other side.
What gave you the confidence that it was even worth working through and on?
You know, me and my husband have been through a lot. Like I said, well, I've told you, but for anybody else, me and my husband had met, we dated for 2 months, and I found out I was pregnant within those 2 months. So things moved really, really quickly together. I had, we got married. I met him in October. Well, I met him in January, but we didn't start dating until October. Found out we got pregnant in December, got engaged in February, got married in March. And then we had Atlas, and that was like a whole whirlwind. And then decided to join the military. My husband has a pretty severe health condition that costs on the civilian side about $5,000 a month to maintain.
Mm.
And the answer for us at that point was, well, TRICARE covers it. And I was like, you know what? I love you. Let's just sign it. Let's go. So I joined the military. So I obviously love this man very much, you
Yeah, you
know,
do.
and he's been my best friend forever. And I figured it was like, maybe I was a little harsh. Maybe like it's hard to relinquish your role. I feel like as a man, and maybe this is biased, but I feel like as a man, you want the instinctual role is to protect and provide. And and as a breadwinner, and as I'm a fairly, I can be an intimidating, I guess, female to some, and I think being that role of like the breadwinner and being the head of the household, he felt like he had to relinquish kind of that role of himself. And so to learn
Mhm.
how to build that confidence back and me to tell him like you can do this, like you got this, like I need you, it's a lot to put on somebody. And I think, I should have been a little bit more affirming, like vocally, like, I love you, we can do this, instead
Mhm.
of me feeling the stress and maybe just adding to his stress. So, he's, like I said, he's been my best friend. We had never had these kind of fights really before. And so I had faith that as long as he continued to work on himself and, we can come back as equal partners and continue to communicate, it would work out. And no one, we both love our kids. We both want, there's still that bond that you have with like the father of your kids. I see him and my kids every day. And I really feel like no one's going to love them like their dad loves
Mhm.
them. And I love him too. So why not just give it a second try?
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of motivating factors there to have you
Oh
both
yeah.
do the work on yourselves and with each other. You even had joined the military for him. Clearly, you love him
Yeah.
so much. And that, like you said too, there's that reflection on maybe how that affected him as well. But on the subject of being in the military, one of your followers wanted to ask if your competing life and military life ever butt heads or compete with each other or interfere with each other due to the physical fitness standards.
The standards, I wouldn't say so much. The schedule, yeah. Like the standards, they're I feel like they're not that hard to pass. They're more difficult to exceed. Like if you wanted to get a top score, like a 600, there's 6 events. So to get a top score in 100 in each event is a 600 score,
Mhm.
and I kind of live around the 580s because there's this one event that I can't do. That's a ball throw. You have to hold it and like throw it over your head X amount of meters. And I just cannot get either I'm letting go too early or too late. Who knows what I'm doing? Maybe I'm just not strong enough. But that's one of the events. But I wouldn't really say it affects my PT score too much. Maybe if I'm like in prep, deep in prep, and I had to take a PT test, 2 weeks out, then yeah, maybe because I'm not eating enough. It's like a run, a deadlift, a plank, like sprint drag carries. So you're like dragging a sled, carrying kettlebells. It's a pretty intense PT test. But as a bikini competitor, would I say that it interferes to your score? Not necessarily. Schedule wise, yeah. Because by skill set, I'm a 68 Fox physical therapy tech, as you said. Um, and it's a fairly, I don't say easy job, but in terms of military standards, it could be a lot worse. I got very lucky with the career that I was given. I asked for it and I waited for it, but I'm lucky still that I got it. And to have it in my hometown is even better. But outside of that, like right now, like I said, I'm on funeral honors. Who knows what my schedule is going to be? Like today, I had a funeral this morning, and I was lucky enough to be able to get onto this podcast today. But tomorrow, I have to be, in Houston, which is about 4 hours away, and the funeral is at 10 a.m. I have to be there an hour early, so that means I'm leaving here or leaving base at 5, and I'm waking up. I live about an hour from base. I'm waking up at like 3:45 to book it
Yeah.
down there. So the schedule can be kind of funky. Um, I don't really plan off days because I know life's just going to shoot me one at its own time. Whether it's the kids, whether it's the military, I just try to keep my workouts in as much as I can. I prep my meals, and I just take them with me. If that means I'm taking like a bunch of meals everywhere, every day, so be it. But yeah, like I don't know. Like I said, the military kind of gave you that mindset of like you just got to roll with it. It's got to roll the
Mm,
punches. There's never going to be a great time to prep. There's never going to be the perfect time to compete. So you just got to fit it in if it's what you want to do. I
so
feel like there's
true.
also a standard to like compete now if you to prove that you're like you work out. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not a big if you don't want to do if you just love the gym, you can love the gym. No one says you have to compete. So when I hear sometimes people like complaining about it, I'm like, no one has a gun to your head telling you you need to do this. You can
Exactly.
stop at any time.
That's exactly right. That's a really good point, actually. It does seem like there's a trend to use competing as a means to prove that you work out or that you're a capable trainer or that you are a gym influencer. And
Right. You can still love it without it. Like no one's gonna knock you for that. But yeah. So military time can be challenging, but I know a lot of people that do it too. I have quite a few friends that are at my base that compete as well. Um, it can be done. It's just a little bit more difficult. Hardest thing about being in the military, I'd say, is like if you're not happy with something, you can't just quit. Oh yeah, I signed a 4-year contract. I'm here for a little bit.
hmm Well, that's a great way to build that like responsibility and follow through. If I've spoken with other athletes before, as you know, who it actually gave them discipline that they didn't
Oh
have.
yeah,
It sounds
for
like for
sure.
you, it's positively affected your life and given you the ability to let go of needing to know what's next, but has it contributed anything else?
I mean, I never thought I was gonna like the military. That was never a job that I wanted. But I've actually really liked it a lot. It's taught me a lot about resiliency. So I mean, I was a late person all the time, so it's given me a lot of
Mm.
discipline. Um, it's taught me to like to find my own voice as well. There's a lot of great things in the military, but it's a melting pot of people. So you meet those not so great ones as well. So you learn how to collaborate and work with people that maybe not be you might not have in the past or might ever seen yourself working with before, but you still got to get the mission done. So yeah,
Wow.
a lot of good relationships.
That those are all really great lessons and takeaways from that. I wouldn't have thought about the working with a variety of people and
Right. And
learning
sometimes you
how
have
to
to
do
mentor
that.
soldiers, like you're in charge of soldiers that are younger than you, that are from a different part of the country than you, that were raised really differently than you know, and you still have to lead them, you know, and earn their respect and earn their trust. And so it can be a little bit interesting, but it's rewarding at the same time.
Yeah. Now, with your responsibility for funeral honors, does that weigh on you emotionally?
You know, I thought it was going to, I think more than it does. It gives you a lot of perspective. I've had to put whenever I do funerals for like say an older gentleman, that was our first funeral. We saw the PowerPoint of their life, and you know his daughter was in tears, but he had lived like a long life, and from the PowerPoint it looked like he lived a very beautiful life. And although that church was filled with a lot of sad individuals, it was also filled with a lot of individuals that loved him very much.
Mm.
So I felt very honored to be a part of that service and um, provide the funeral honors and present, you know, the flag in that way for somebody that seemed like that had a really lasting impact on a lot of people. But then you do have to do it for like I had to do one for a 22-year-old. And
Mm.
that's gut wrenching because you have to present the flag for the parent, you know,
Mm.
and that's I never my kids will always be my kids and I'm always gonna see them as, you know, a stormtrooper or a princess. You know, they're my little ones, no matter how old they get. And so the idea of having to, you know, that did get me in tears. That did hit me a little bit because it makes me want to cry now. Because I never want that to ever be a possibility, you know. Um, but then it says give you that perspective. Like you see you as a service member, you see colonels and super high ranking people, and you're like, wow, I can't imagine being a colonel. I'm a sergeant right now. But to those really high enlisted or generals, and you know, some of those people have the least amount of people at their funeral because they gave everything to their job and didn't build enough of the relationships with the people around them. Sometimes you'll see people lower ranking than me that were veterans and they retired as a specialist in E4 and rooms filled, you know, with people. So it gives you this perspective of like, yeah, I love my job. I want to progress in my job, but my relationships with, you know, my kids and my spouse, like don't lose that because you can't take it with you. You know, when you're gone, it's about the memory that you have with the people that you left behind. So it gives
Wow.
you a lot of perspective, give you a lot of thought.
When you face death that often, I think
Yeah,
you there's nothing else that can come from it but perspective.
right. Yeah. So it's been really interesting. Really, the schedule's really weird, but I do actually very much enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. the fact that you never intended to go into the military, did that for your husband, and have found joy in it
Yeah.
speaks volumes about you
Mhm.
and what it is that you're willing to do, and then your ability to have positive outlooks and perspective and take a difficult situation and make it better.
Yeah, I think that is one of the benefits of like my skill set per se, is I can find the good in quite a lot of things. That is one of the you can be a master resiliency trainer. That's one of the things you can get certified in for the military. That's something I would really, really want to do. And it's all about hunting the good stuff, because it can be a lot of these young soldiers that join, you know, it was weird being the grandma at basic training, a 27-year-old when my battle buddy was 17. Um, but a lot of these young soldiers are being pushed and challenges in ways that they've never, encountered before. And it can get really hard mentally for some of these kids, depending on how, if they've never been away from home, they've never worked out before, and now they're expected to do this intense, PT test, or the training time for your job can be anywhere from a couple weeks to a year, and they're gone and they're in that student role for a very long time. And it can be very mentally difficult, or even just as a regular, service member who may not have a whole lot of support, or be working like the graveyard shift. I would really like to be the person to go in and talk to them and try to help, give them that little encouragement and strength, that you can get through this. It's not going to be dark all the time. There's maybe this station isn't the best for you, but maybe down the line it'll get better. So it is something that I really, really do want to do and be a part of.
Wow, that's amazing. You want to encourage others. It doesn't sound like you're trying to get out. Like, it sounds like you're pretty in it.
Well, like I said, my husband has that condition. So I'm in for 20. I'm going for at least 20. He needs his insurance. My kids need their insurance. But overall, it has been a really good experience. Like I said, I was just a personal trainer working at a supplement store when I met my husband, just kind of floating in ambiguity. I don't really know what I want to do with my life. And, the military gave me a direction and options. Like, now that I know, oh, so I can go get my master's degree paid for and be a social worker, like
That'd
that
be
you'll pay me to
awesome.
just go to school. Like, what job does that? You
Yeah,
know? And then I get experience, and when I get out eventually, I can add that to my resume. Like, I'm very fortunate. There's a lot of wonderful things that came with the military that I didn't know about. Yeah, you sacrifice a little bit of time. Yeah, it can be the early mornings can really stink, but overall, it's a really good organization. I'm very blessed to be a part of the military.
that's amazing. I think that's just so admirable. Not just the fact that you're serving the country, but also you're serving your family through this.
Oh yeah, they're number one for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you recognize that importance too. And you have had multiple experiences in your life where people have doubted you or didn't support you or would tell you you don't have the discipline, or you don't, or for bodybuilding, you don't have the genetics or the discipline. So when you did decide to compete, were you already thinking about competing before you had your son? Or did your son inspire, like, yeah, walk us through how you overcame those doubts and then eventually did commit to it.
So, like I said, I was a personal trainer before. I was working at LA Fitness for a little while, and I loved it working out. The diet was not my forte at that point. Like, I ate healthy, but I never saw myself eating like to the rigidness that's required to compete. And competing had just kind of started taking off. Actually, at my gym, Ashlyn was she was training for her first show. And so
Oh,
Ashlyn has a very, she's smaller statured and then already kind of like petite. And it's not what it is now, what it was back then. It was
right.
very much just about the dieting down more than the muscle density. And so I was seeing her and I was like, man, she looks good though. Like I want that kind of look. And my coworkers were always like, Marina, like, no, you don't have the discipline for that. You're too thick for that. You're never going to be able to diet down that low. Even if you wanted to, your body won't let you. And so I kind of let those voices take over for a fair amount of years. And then it wasn't a big deal. I was just like, oh, I'm just not built for it. Whatever. I like working out. I like looking this way too. It's fine. It's just not my thing. But then after I had my son, and I don't want to say I was out of shape because I just had a baby. I'm just don't have
Exactly.
a baby in
You're
me anymore
recovering.
shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't out of shape, but I had never seen my body like that before. I was like, whoa, who is this person? Like, and my husband had competed once before, and he was like,
Mm.
well, you know what? You've said that you wanted to. Why not just try it? Like, just see if you can. And it's a good goal for you. And I was at that point, it had been a couple years since my first seeing Ashlyn. So it was starting to go a little bit more denser, a little bit more muscular. And I was like, you know what? Let's just see. It's better than how I look right now. It's definitely going to be better than how I look right now. So why not just worst comes to worst, I get last place, but I look better than I ever have. So
Yeah.
so I was like, let's just do it. And then I started listening to you and watching the shows. And I remember being on cardio and watching like every national show prior to that year. And I was just like studying it and watching it over and over again. And I was like,
Mm.
man, they're so graceful. How do they do that? Um, and so then, yeah, so that started the first prep. My coach at that time, we didn't have a whole lot of national competitors. It was very much the sense of if you get top five, that's great.
Yeah.
If you get top five in novice, that's great. Well, me and my husband did not have the money to do true novice or novice. We were just like, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it for what it is and do open. Like why
Mhm.
not, at least try. And so, yeah, I was studying and looking at the past shows, listening to you. And I was getting really, really inspired because had seen my body start to change in ways it never had, you know? Um,
Mhm.
and that first show was so funny. We didn't have we didn't have a babysitter the night before. So we went up to check-ins with my son in the stroller. I don't know if do you know Bernadette Galvan, the judge?
Oh, yes.
So at that point, she was one of the people checking me in, and she was the judge for that show. And we still talk and communicate and talk about that first time.
Um,
But yeah, so she was checking me in, and she was like, "This suit's a little small, but your glutes look amazing." And I was like, "Oh my God, thank you!" Like losing my mind. I made a lot of mistakes as a first time competitor. I bought an ombre suit. I really didn't think that was like. It's not really a mistake, but not really seen too often. They kind of want the solid color-ish things. Didn't
yeah,
really matter. Didn't I still did well.
really
But
well.
yeah, so we went up at the check-ins, came back down. I didn't have enough money to stay in Austin. So we came back to San Antonio, got a tan the night before and the morning of, drove up in our tans. My husband was just like gone by the time we got up there. He sweated through it so bad.
I bet.
I did my own hair, did my own makeup. And yeah, I did it. And but to my surprise, to my team's surprise, ended up taking the overall at that show. And then I was just kind of hooked at that point. I was like,
Mhm.
you know what? And I still hold it with me today, this phrase. I remember backstage when I got moved to center and I was like, why not me? And
Mm.
then I got called out for the overall and I was like, I kind of want the overall now. I just wanted to be top five and now I got first. So, like, I kind of want this. Why not me? Why can't I win the overall? And so that's always kind of stuck with me is that phrase, like, why not me? If I did the work and I'm new, it's my first show, but if I did the work and I did everything I could in my power, I checked all the boxes, and why can't it be me? Why couldn't I be the one? So
Right. Yes, I love that.
Mm.
And you proved that to yourself. You really did exactly that. And you didn't expect it, which is also really cool. You were just going to do this for your best next self and see what
Right.
happens. And it turned into wanting to pursue it further. So when did you decide you wanted to go pro?
So after I won that show, um, everybody was already like, go to nationals. And I was like, oh no, like I mean, I watched it, but I was like, that takes years. Like, I'm not ready for that? And I was already signed up to go to basic training pretty soon after that. So I did two more shows. Yeah. And then I went to basic. So I was like, I knew it has to be next year if I want to go. And depending on how I come back because honestly, my body morphed at basic. They don't do legs at basic training. They run and they do pull-ups and they do push-ups. So my back, I came back, my husband was like, your back is huge. Because
Yeah.
I've been doing so many pull-ups. He was like, you look like a lineman. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I got to build these legs back up. But they were already kind of big to begin with, so it was all right. But yeah, so after that, I came back. The itch was there. I really wanted to jump back in. And so I was like, you know what? Let's just set up for a national show at the end of the year. And we'll see how we do. And then after that, I was like, oh, lost my mind. And then obviously Athena.
Yeah. And then life, right? And then
Mhm.
you eventually, you did win your pro card, obviously. So walk us through what you were focused on prior, like feedback wise. It sounds like you were trying to build up your legs since your upper body had grown. Is that some of the feedback
Right.
you had gotten as well?
So I have pretty big legs, like naturally, um, and I have really big quads, unfortunately, in terms of balance wise.
I hear
Um,
that.
yeah. When I was like a personal trainer, I was working out muscles that I could see. You can see your quads. So I trained my quad and I would completely neglect my hamstrings. And so that took a while to build up.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, uh, my feedback after that show was after my first national show. Gosh, I think it was just keep coming. It was one of those kind of feedbacks, just show up again. It just wasn't you today, but the
Yeah.
next one it will be. And so I was planning on maybe doing USA's or NPC at that point, and or was it North Americans and NPC championship? And it obviously didn't pan out.
Yeah.
Um, but so then I came back the following year, and I didn't even really do a building phase, to be honest. Like I had
Yeah.
my daughter in September, and then I stepped on stage the following June.
It's just so crazy how much muscle you have,
Yeah.
like it's amazing. I mean, obviously your job requires a level of physical fitness, but also the fact that like you were able to grow the way that you did and like you brought like a pro physique really to the stage and you were rewarded.
Well, the second time I went to nationals, I got six. And but I was kind of forgiving on myself. I was like, well, you didn't really build. Like you had a baby and then you walked on stage. Like
Yeah.
you didn't really have an isolated amount of time to really do too much with it.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was in good company because after I got that sixth place win, I was looking at everybody who had competed after me, or they either won their pro card or they got their pro card that year. And I was like, okay, I'm in good company at least. I knew all the women that were getting fifth and above. I was like, they all look amazing. They're gonna get it. It's just a matter of time for all of us at this point, you
Yes.
know? Um, and yeah, I've always been pretty dense to begin with. And then I work out during my pregnancies. I worked out the day
Yeah.
I delivered my daughter. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I just keep going. I mean, if I feel
Love
like I'm
that.
straining myself or if I'm gonna hurt myself, then I kind of lean like I don't lift as heavy, but I still do all the same movements pretty much, aside from anything on my tummy.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Like you have such an impressive physique. You have obviously such great discipline and commitment to your goals. What was your feedback when you got sixth place? And then how did you improve that to win your pro card? Because your physique was so much more balanced when you won your pro card from top to
Right.
bottom. So what was the feedback you got in 2022 prior to earning your pro card in 23?
My feedback was my posing, and I was a little bit too conditioned on the hamstring part. And so I just ended up, and then a little bit of like I think they said upper glute, but I thought when I saw the pictures, I was like, I just like a dense mama. I just need to chill out for a little bit, I think. And so me and my I just look a little too much. And then I ended up getting an augmentation. And so
Uh-huh.
that kind of forced me into a break. And so I couldn't do as much upper body. And then I think it just ended up working out that I had to do more lower than upper. And yeah, my coach too, a lot of coaches that I had previously, I mean, they were good. They're good coaches. Do not get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with almost every physique that I brought. And I think a lot of what I've brought has just time, understanding the sport that also contributes to, a better physique. I don't think it's necessarily coaching. However, and I have to, it's not their fault. Like I said, I had a baby. I'm going to be stuck doing a lot of cardio. That's
Oh,
just is what it is. My coach, currently, he is really great in that he talks about how I'm doing mentally, what's going on in your life. Why can't you do this? Maybe we only do this much cardio. Maybe we, change your diet up a little bit if you're working a lot, if you're on your feet a lot right now, or you're not. Like maybe we pull back here so you don't have to do as much cardio.
yeah.
And so it was weird kind of going into the show. I'm used to killing myself in cardio because most of my preps had been post baby, that I was like, I'm not dying right now. Like something's wrong. I should feel
Uh-huh.
like, you know,
I should be miserable.
depleted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to not have that like death like looming over you feeling, I was
Yeah.
like, did I do enough? Like I did what he
Yeah.
said, but did I do enough? So yeah.
That's a great point. I think there's a lot of competitors who have been there where they're like, I'm bringing my best, but like, did I bring my best? Like, did I give my
Yeah.
all? Because they went from being like torturous preps to maybe like
Right.
better. And I do think,
It
like you
doesn't have
said,
to kill you.
yes. And we go through different phases in life that can cause different things, but I think this evolution a lot of competitors go through where we're learning, we're growing, we're addressing things that come up within our bodies or our minds that help us be better athletes, and just improve. And you mentioned you had multiple different coaches, and this is something I wanted to speak with you about, which is a lot of times athletes get hung up on when to stay with a coach and when to go, whether it's a positive or a negative situation or not. And you said, yours were good. You had good coaches. You have nothing bad to say. Many athletes are probably listening and struggling with this choice right now. So, how did you navigate making those decisions? And what are some of the factors that you had in mind when considering whether or not to find a new coach?
Well, I think it's I left them for all I mean, I changed coaches, all of them for different reasons. I think that they were there with me for that season because I needed them for that season. And
Hmm.
then with that first coach, I was one of the ones that was doing the better. I was one of the better, athletes.
Yeah.
And he was kind of pushing me a little bit too hard to try to get that name out there. And I was doing a lot of shows that by the end of it, I was just exhausted.
Mm.
And the reaction to being pregnant with my daughter wasn't ideal. And so I was like, I need somebody who's going to be supportive at all phases of my life, not just the phase of me being on stage. And
Yeah.
so I did a little soul searching, talked to some other, competitors. I was so in love with with competing. Even when I was pregnant, I was teaching girls how to pose when I was pregnant.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
Love
I just love that environment. Me and my husband go on date nights to shows where we'll work the show and that's our date night.
that.
So I love
That's great.
I love it so much. Even when I'm pregnant, I'm still there once in a while. And so I was learning about this other coach and he was good. I feel like he brought the best he could for what he had at that point. But I think I wanted somebody who was going to be I had saw my current coach, I'd seen him at every single show, and it was never a struggle for him to get there. It was never, well, how am I going to get there? Are you going to pay for this? Are you going to pay for that? How am I going to go? And I get that I want him there, but I also feel like,
Mm.
especially if there's multiple athletes there, as a coach, I feel like you should want to go support your athletes, and it shouldn't necessarily, it's so expensive to compete. And now to
It shouldn't
also be
incur a
thinking about what's
Yeah.
that?
It shouldn't, I don't think it
Costs.
should be a cost on the athlete.
Right. Like I'm already having to pay for the suit, the tan, the entry fee, like everything. And then on top of that, I'm having to figure out how to get you there. And I'd seen my coach at all these shows supporting all these athletes, and I was like, wow, like you're very much loved to have you here. He's like, no, I'm here because I want to be here. And I was like, oh, okay. And so having somebody that's like just wants to be there because he's
Yeah.
excited to see his competitors compete, like you wouldn't think that's a big ask, but it sometimes can be, and it's just, I think I vibe better with this. He's very interested in my lifestyle. He's very interested in showing up and being present for us when we're competing. And he does bring really great quality work. So I was really happy to find Ivan. He's a really good coach. And
Yeah,
he's local-ish. He's in Austin. So I'm able to go up there and like train with him once in a while, and he can like critique my physique in person because it's always different on pictures.
that's awesome. Yeah, it's good to find someone who actually cares about your whole life,
Mhm.
not just how you can benefit their business.
Right.
So that's very important. And I think that's a key factor for athletes to consider when looking for a coach, as well as, of course, costs. So I'm kind of summarizing what I'm hearing were factors like costs, attention to detail, their commitment to you as an athlete, not so much to their business, and then also their passion for the
Genuine
sport.
love for the sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like, I think coaches don't need to go to every single show. That would be a lot.
No.
But like you said, that if there's a lot of athletes already going in there, it makes sense to go. And I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and he did such a great job at nationals, but I will say having my best friend there, like in the case where my husband was, of course, I wish now in hindsight, I wish he was there, but
Uh,
having my best friend there, oh my God, she had been through so much. I'm sure you're going to interview her at some point. She's going to turn pro. She's the most amazing human being. But yeah, she really knocked it out of the park having her there, and my
wow.
coach, both of them. She had just lost her husband that year, and so for her to come show up and support me and like just be there for me, I was like, you have so much on your plate, like, are you sure you want to be my stage mom? And she was like, yes, absolutely. And it was just so,
Wow.
she's so amazing. I was very lucky to have her.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. I'm sure there must have been some satisfaction and fulfillment for her too to put her energy into somebody she cares about.
Oh yeah. Like we had been, I was going through, what I was going through, and she was very much there for me, and the same could be said for, when she was going through her stuff, I was very much there for her. So it was good to have like that girl time that we both so desperately needed with how that year had gone.
Did you guys meet each other through the sport?
Yep. Yep.
That's so
She's
cool.
Yeah, I remember going to one of her shows, and she was fangirling over me, and I remember seeing her on stage, and I was like, but you look so good. And then she's a mom of two also. And so even though she doesn't live like she's in Texas, but Texas is huge. It's like practically several states.
Yeah.
And
It
so she
is
lives in like the
ginormous.
Houston area. And even though she does live over there, we're still constantly like texting, calling each other like every day. She came over during the holidays to come be with me. And the kids
Oh,
had a blast because, they're all within kind of the same age. So it
oh,
was it
that's
was a really good
cool.
time. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I have a really close friend, we call each other randomly all the time, and I call him Pookie Dials. It's like on the way to the grocery store, gonna call Pookie, do a little Pookie
Yeah.
dial.
I don't know who to talk to. There's too much silence. I need to call her and see how she's doing. There's a disturbance in the forest.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So, what are you currently focused on? What are your goals with competing right now?
So right now, my goal is I want to do my pro debut sometime in September, God willing. Just to try, I'm actually really excited to put the white belt back on and just be like, you know, no
Get
one
some
knows
stripes.
me. Like it'll just be cool to see what happens. Like if I do great, cool. If I don't, I'm standing next to pros, like, come on. So I'm really excited to do that, and hopefully it'll be here in San Antonio. I want to do like the extravaganza, like the one down here. It's going to be at the Lilac Cockerel, which is cool because I remember tap dancing there when I was like a 5-year-old.
Oh, that's so cool. That's something else I was going to ask you. When you were a dancer, it led to you being very hypercritical of your body, so much so that you had developed a eating disorder, and that actually led you to collapsing during a rehearsal. And then that kind of, it sounds like that led to learning how to love yourself and take care of yourself. And you had shared that when you had your son and saw your body change and bare life, it actually transformed your perspective on your body gave you a deeper appreciation. So can you kind of expand on this? That was a pretty quick and brief overview of a lot. And
Yeah.
I recognize it's not like a light subject, but can you expand on that journey to self-love and maybe how your view on your body and food has changed over the years from being a dancer to then being a mom and a competitor?
Right, yeah. So I went to magnet school here in San Antonio for musical theater. It's like an all-encompassing art school, but it was a magnet. The department that I was in was for musical theater. They also had like visual arts, dance, everything. And so instead of extracurricular activities, we would take ballet, tap, contemporary, jazz, like all of the dances, vocal lessons, acting lessons, and a lot at the time I grew up in like the thigh gap era. Like I've heard apparently a lot of us have. And when you're in a leotard for like I would say, God, like over half the day, you don't and you're bouncing up and down, seeing things jiggle isn't ideal, like in a high school environment. And a lot of them are just built different. Both my parents are pretty heavy set. And so weight gain can come pretty easily for us. And so I'd always been fearful that I would end up overweight like my parents, you know.
Mm.
Um, and then being around all these, uh, I guess more slender built, women, I would sometimes get a little bit of, ridicule and feel uncomfortable in the get up for dance rehearsals and dance recitals to where I started restricting. And I thought I was doing the healthy thing, and then slowly it starts to become, how far can I take this? I'm liking this. Like, I want to fit into the smaller pant size or smaller dress size. And to a point where I couldn't donate blood, I was just too small. And then I collapsed and had like a minor fit at a rehearsal. And then my parents kind of had to draw attention to it. The teachers kind of informed them. And I recognized that, oh, this isn't healthy. This isn't how I'm going against what my body naturally wants to do. It's not, we lost the health aspect at this point, and now we're just at a control point. And,
Mhm.
I think, talking with my family, talking to my teachers, it wasn't the teachers, this wasn't their first rodeo. They had been through this a lot, so they helped me out a lot. And then I think just going to college, being off on my own, um, I just started to realize I'm never going to be anybody else. And, comparison, like they always say, is a thief of joy. Um, and I have a lot of other great things to offer, and a lot that outside of even just physical. Like I am very happy with my body now. But I think it was also just developing who Marina was, and what she brings to the table outside of just, my physical appearance. But yeah, so I think and then when you become a parent, I don't know, like it gives you like this I don't care about anything. I'll go anywhere without makeup.
Mm.
I'll go like, I'll go to the gym. I used to be so obsessed with wearing makeup to the gym, and now I'm just like, whatever, I'm here. It's just it's
For
like
sure.
my green card to get to just self-acceptance too, is being a parent, because you just don't have time. Like, you're lucky I'm here.
It's like your exposure therapy to the most natural version of yourself.
Right, yeah. And I think just having good female friends and like recognizing like, oh, they're really nice too. Like, yeah, they're beautiful, but they're awesome. Like, they're just nice people. Like when I was backstage, I was so scared when I was in line to get my for comparisons at nationals, and Jessica McGuire and Kayla Krause, I don't know if you know either of them, but
Mhm.
they were in line with me and they were calming me down. And I had seen somebody, I think I saw Tyler and Sandy look at my shoulders and they said something, and I was like, oh no, they're too big. Like they're not gonna like this. And I got off stage and they kind of could tell I was bummed. And they're like, hey, you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're saying. Like, just,
Wow.
it could be a good thing. They might be complimenting you. I think so having like
Yeah.
beautiful female friends, kind of show you like, yes, they're beautiful, but there's so much more than that. And it's like we all are. So I think just being more open to having more female friends and not comparing yourself on just that physical aspect. Yeah, it helped me out a lot.
That's a great point. Having female friends where you can identify characteristics in them. I was just speaking at a retreat in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and one of the activities I had them do was share how they would describe themselves outside of bodybuilding and also how they would describe each other. The lists were like miles long, of how we would,
Oh, good.
yeah, it was awesome. Like how they described each other. It was such a strong representation of how you don't look at your friend and go, oh, she's my friend because she lost 5 pounds this week,
Oh,
or
yeah.
she's my friend because she looks good in a bikini. It's like, no, she's my friend because she's compassionate, she's vulnerable, she's kind.
Right.
It's those things that really matter.
I feel like it's so easy for people to get lost in the bikini like world. I feel like a lot of people do lose their identity in competing. And I think that's partially why I waited too on top of it was like I definitely knew who I was when I decided to step on stage. At that point, I was like, I'm Marina the mom, I'm Marina the wife, I'm Marina, she does this, she does that. I had these other hats that I wore that this ended up just being another hat, another hobby, but it definitely was not my identity where I think if I had competed when I was younger, like I think I would have definitely gotten lost in the sauce with that. So yes, I think it's cool when I see moms or professionals competing. And then sometimes like there's this almost like this like dichotomy of like that's really impressive. But you're only 22, you don't work a real job or you don't have this and that. Like it's easier for you. No, it's hard for those 22-year-olds to put their toys away and put the drinking away and the peer pressure away for them to get on stage too and to not lose themselves. Like it's hard on both ends.
Right.
I think a lot of people can get lost in it. And I know that the younger me probably would have. So I'm kind of glad I waited.
That's such a great point. It's so easy to minimize based on like age or what someone's going through. Like I started at 18 and I was like, that's actually crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Next year will be 10 years, girl. I'm like, I'm a completely different person than who is that? I don't even know her.
Absolutely flourish. Yeah. I don't even when I think about who I was when I was like 21, I was like, I wouldn't even hang out with her. I don't even know who that person is. Like,
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, girl. So I get that. Like I get that you could get lost in it. And I think it's easy. You're looking for an identity no matter what
right.
age, but especially when you're younger, you're trying on different hats, as you said, and
Yeah.
you're taking on different roles. And then I think in this sport it's especially important to continue to participate in life.
Life.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yes. So many people put their worth in the placing. Like I see it all the time, like where they're flying high when they're winning, and then when they lose, it's like, depression and rebounds and like
Yes.
find something else. Like it is this is fleeting and you can be on top one day and then down at the bottom the next and then back up. So you just don't know. So you got to find something else to
Yeah.
value in yourself than just what you bring to the table on stage.
Truly. That was beautiful. I agree completely. You're a representation of that too. And that's something to take great pride in. Like, I think it's okay too when someone's laser focused on this, that's all they want to do. But I also think if that laser focus makes you lose who you are and have confidence regardless of a placing, there's work to be done.
Right. Yeah. And it can, you might not realize it, but then you start to just, descend. Yeah. At
Yep.
first you think it's like I'm not obsessed. I'm just goal oriented. And then slowly you know, that starts to diminish a little bit. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah, I think it's always good to just kind of keep one foot on the ground, and not get too far gone in it. It's fun and it's great and it teaches you a lot of valuable lessons. Like I always bring almost every like lesson or parable of bodybuilding, when I'm talking to people like, oh, it's just like bodybuilding with this and that. And it
Yeah,
does offer
exactly.
it's awesome, but it's not everything. And it's important to remember that.
I look at bodybuilding as like a gift from God in my life. And so I have to be willing to offer it back to him. And
Right.
not I over identify or idolize it, but instead say, thank you. I'm going to steward this well, but I won't let it define me because you defined me, because
Right.
I'm a child of you. And that's where my identity is, not in this. So if, if someone's wondering, how do I detach from that? I think it's important. Like, where could you find your identity that's not fleeting or based on placing or outcomes, but instead who you truly are? And are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give this up to establish other areas, or are you willing to give this up to recognize that it's not completely who you are? I think if you have such a tight grip on it, it's a sign that it could have a negative impact down the road if it doesn't already. But if you can confidently say, if it needs to be given up, I can give it up. I think that shows a detachment that's healthier.
Right. Like, am I steering the ship or is it steering me? Like,
Oh, yeah.
people put so many like things that they want outside of this and fear that it's going to contradict their competitive journey. Like, I know girls right now who are like, I want to have kids, but I really want to get this first. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, both will come when they're supposed to, you know what I mean? Like, if you want children, who's saying that you can't compete after you have the child? You know, if you're married and you see this yourself having, a big family during the holidays, that's what I always wanted. I was an only child for most of my life until we adopted my brother. And so I've always craved like the big, loud, chaotic Christmases. It's just what I want. And so we'll see where I'm at. Like, I love competing, but if I get into a financially more comfortable place where I can support another kid, I'm probably going to have another kid. And then I'll
Totally.
come back to this when I come back to it. It'll always be there. And all these masters athletes are just proving that. Like, they look
Exactly.
amazing and they're like in their 40s. And I'm like, okay, I can put this down, have another kid if I want to. It'll still be there. It'll be fine.
That's so true. Yeah, I agree completely. That's a difficult idea to contend with when you are so in it. I was thinking about this the other day.
I
I'm like,
know.
dang, like I really took this time off because I'm trying to grow to get my pro card next year. I want to go for it. But then in the back of my mind, I'm also like, I also want to find a partner to marry and to build a family with. And I don't really want to put that on hold ever. So it's that, like you just said, it's you can do both. And I've come to terms with the fact that, like, I decided a few years ago I would not. I used to say I wouldn't start a family until I got my pro card. 10 years
Right.
in this, I'm like, oh, it's
Maybe
okay.
we'll just see. Yeah, I mean, you just take it as it comes, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, when some people are like, even when do you know when to prep, or how do you know when to compete, or like, I'm gonna eat healthy, I'm gonna eat food anyway, I'm gonna work out
That's
anyway.
right.
I might
Exactly.
as well just, you know what I mean? There's never gonna be a good time. I'm just gonna do it. And
That's
so,
it.
but it's the
Yes.
same thing. Like, I'm still married. I still have my kids. I don't be like, hey, time out. I need to do a show. Like, like I still have to
Yeah.
be there for them too. So they can both coexist. I don't think you have to put down one for the other. But if you do want to start a family, that's a little bit different, and the
Yes.
stage will be there for that.
Yeah, I love that perspective. So that's already great advice, but I have to ask you for your
Yeah.
best advice. So, what would be your best advice for someone who's never competed before but wants to, and then your best advice for somebody who's on their road to pro?
Somebody has ever competed who wants to, I would just say, do your research, like everybody says, do your research. And it is important. Figure out, how much this is going to cost. Like, do the math before, because you don't want to be deep in a prep and then realizing you don't have enough money for this or that,
Right.
or have a game plan. Like, I was looking at tutorials for how to do my makeup and how to do my hair,
Mm.
and watching all that stuff. So I knew I wasn't going to have enough money, but it's something that I very much wanted to do. Okay, well, how do I do that? So just do your research, and then if you're checking all the boxes, like I said, why not you? Why can't it be you? If you're doing everything, don't let anybody intimidate you. If you've done all the work and you've done everything you can and presented your best to the stage, then let that voice say, why not me? Like, speak a little bit louder, because it could be.
Mm.
And then for if you're going road to pro, um, just stay consistent, stay resilient. When it's your time, like I said, it'll be your time. I wish mine had come with my husband there, but I think it happened for a reason. And when it's meant to be, it'll be. If you're, I was very, I don't know, I had a really, that was my first show that I kind of didn't have any expectations going into. I just knew I did everything that I could do to that point. Even with the stress, I brought the best I could bring, and it worked out in my favor. And I think it's just detach yourself from the placing, detach yourself from the card, and then what do you know? You got it. Like, so just keep showing up and just don't expect anything and be grateful when it does happen. It will.
That's great advice. How can we follow your journey to your pro debut and just continue to watch you in all these amazing areas of your life?
I have Instagram. It's Marina_sauce. I love connecting with people. I love talking to moms. I love talking to professionals. I love talking to even novices in the sport who just, want some advice. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll always respond.
Awesome. We will put that in the show notes page. So you guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, it'll be at the top of that page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section, which is alphabetized. You won't just find the links to our social medias, but you're also going to find a full breakdown of this episode, a bulleted list of the topics we covered, and the timestamps so you can share it with your teammates, your friends, your family, and tell them, hey, this was my favorite part. You got to listen to this clip, or just tell them to listen to the full episode. And of course, it means so much to us when you tag us. Let us know you listened to it, and also reach out to the athletes and let them know what you thought, because it goes such a long way. Like, I'm motivated. Marina's telling me before we started recording, she's telling me the impact it's made, that she's been listening since the start of her journey. And that inspires me to keep going. So you guys definitely reach out to the athletes, let them know what you thought, because it inspires them to keep sharing too. So with all of that being said, Marina, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.